It's a beautiful late fall day in Door County, like 55 degrees, sunny. And we're going to hang around the Jensen Center mostly today and show you a few kind of a potpourri of various late fall things to look at. Starting with this gem right here. Started noticing this a few weeks ago. There's a whole line of these clusters of mushrooms. I didn't know what they were. I took a picture and sent it to Charlotte Lucas, who is the Door County mushroom guru. She has identified, I think, like 603 species now over about 50 years. And she knew what this was instantly. This is a gem-studded puffball growing in these tight clusters. They're kind of soft and almost like a sponge. And they're growing in a long line right along the driveway from the front parking lot at the Jensen Center to the employee parking lot and back. And we think maybe there's a root, because most mushrooms grow on decaying organic matter. So there must be a rotting root laying right along the road here that these are feeding on, unless they're feeding just on the mulch itself. But here they are kind of in their prime. And there is another mushroom that we now notice growing in there. This is a different one. I'll have to take another picture for Charlotte. But as these mature, they do something else. They do this to release their spores. They're like little smoke bombs. You can see that. And there are probably 1 million spores each time I push this. I've never seen, and they're clustered all over here, further up the road there, over on a log over there. There just are probably a couple thousand individual mushrooms in this line. Never seen anything like this before. So gem-studded puffball. Plants in the birch family have male flowers, or flower buds in this case, called catkins, C-A-T-K-I-N-S, catkins. So these form in the summer and overwinter, and then they'll elongate, sometimes a couple inches, and shed their pollen in the spring, early spring. And then plants in the birch family are monoecious. That means means one house. That means they have separate male and female flowers on the same plant. So the female flowers are smaller, and the pollen will find those flowers, and they'll form a little, in this case, a little hop-like fruit later in the season. But these are the catkins on Ironwood, also called American hop hornbeam, because of that hop hornbeam, because of that hop-like fruit that develops later in the season. And hornbeam, I think it's an ancient reference to a certain part of the ship that hardwood was used for, the hornbeam. Anyway, so this is right behind the Jensen Center, this beautiful ironwood tree that Eric and I planted about 22 years ago. That's thriving, and it looks like it's going to have a healthy number of male flowers next spring. Ironwood, or American hop hornbeam. This is one of my favorite shrubs that is very common at the clearing underneath, usually in the understory beneath maples and beech, but other trees too. This is leatherwood, called that because you can just about tie the twigs in a knot without breaking. They're so pliable. But it's a good example of a shrub that, in my opinion, looks better in the winter than it does in the summer. It's attractive in the summer too. Spring, it has little yellow flowers early and nice foliage in summer. And fall color is usually yellow, not fantastic, but nice. But it really comes into its own when it drops its leaves. It's got this beautiful branching habit, beautiful architecture, not like some shrubs that are kind of twiggy in the winter. This really, I think, is the most attractive in the winter with this great branching habit. Almost reminds me of a scrunched down magnolia tree, but really nice. Leatherwood, classic understory shrub in Door County. This is common witch hazel. It's the latest blooming tree or shrub in Wisconsin. Here it is November 2nd, and it's just starting to bloom. Not showy, but interesting, yellow, kind of strap-like petals that come out in late fall. They start out like that, little yellow, and then they open up to this. And they eventually develop into this woody seed pod. It takes a full year for that to develop, so they're pollinated now, but I think not fertilized until the spring, and then this develops over the summer. And when these are ripe, they open up suddenly and throw out their seeds away from the mother plant. They're slightly fragrant. You got to get close to them. Nice spicy odor. And this is the stick or the twigs that was used traditionally for water witching or dowsing for water to find a water source or a water line. Preferred twig for that. And the word witch in witch hazel doesn't refer to a witch as we think of that word, but an ancient word for water, a reference to using this twig to find water. So here is a plant in full bloom right now on November 2nd, common witch hazel. This is another plant in the birch family. We looked at it last time in fall color, but here it is a month later with, again, its catkins, these male flower buds that in this case will sometimes get 3 inches long when they elongate in very early spring on beech hazelnut and shed their pollen. But these interesting little kind of hot dog shaped catkins, they're single on hazelnuts. They're in those clusters of 3 on Ironwood. This is American beech in late fall, and they turn brown, but often with some yellow streaks in them, which is very attractive. And they start to reveal their buds that formed in summer, these long chestnut brown pointy buds. But the interesting thing about beech in late fall and right through winter is they hold many of their dried, withered brown leaves all winter long. That's called marcescence. And plants in the oak family do that, so oaks, beech, true chestnuts. Horse chestnut, remember, is not a true chestnut, it's a buckeye, but the true chestnuts also do this. And then some other trees in the birch family do this. Ironwood does this too. And on beech and oaks and true chestnuts, it's on younger trees or at the base and inside of older trees. That's juvenile wood. The oldest wood is the juvenile. Grew when the plant was juvenile. So younger trees do it, and then the inner base of older trees will, they'll dry their leaves, they'll turn brown, but they'll hold all winter, and then they'll come off in spring when these buds start to swell. So it adds a lot of color in the winter landscape and some sound on windy days as they move in the wind. It just adds a lot to the Door County winter landscape. And you can divide the clearing in thirds growing north and south. The north third is a lot of beech. That middle third, again going south, not as many. And the south third, hardly any at all. That's because this is the oldest woods on the north end. And this is a climax tree that will eventually develop along with sugar maple and hemlock and form that climax forest, the northern hardwood forest, the thing that this land wants to become, and can maintain itself in that condition indefinitely in a way, unless there's some kind of catastrophic event like clear cut, a fire, over the long term, climate change maybe. But in the north end of the clearing, we have this much older forest that grew back right away after the first clear cutting in the 1870s and 80s. So lots of beech up here.